Welcome to Lesson 3. Now that we understand objectives and theory of change, we're ready to build our logic model. A logic model is a visual representation of your program, showing how resources lead to activities, activities produce outputs, and outputs generate outcomes. Today we focus on the left side of the logic model, inputs and activities. These are the resources you need and the actions you'll take. Getting these right is essential because everything else depends on them. If your inputs are insufficient or your activities are poorly designed, the rest of the model collapses. By the end of this lesson, you'll accomplish 3 objectives. First, identify all required inputs for program implementation. This means cataloging every resource your program needs: money, people, materials, space, partnerships. Second, design activities that logically connect to intended outputs. Activities should flow naturally from inputs and produce clear, measurable results. And third, assess resource sufficiency. Do you actually have enough of what you need? This reality check prevents planning programs that can't be implemented. Let me orient you to the logic model structure. It flows from left to right, from resources to results. On the far left are inputs, the resources you invest in the program: money, staff, materials, partnerships. Next are activities, what the program does with those resources: training sessions, outreach visits, materials distribution. Then outputs, the direct products of your activities: number of people trained, number of visits completed, materials distributed. And on the right are outcomes, the changes that result from outputs at short, medium, and long-term time horizons. The flow is logical. Resources enable actions. Actions produce products. Products generate changes. Today we focus on the first 2 columns, inputs and activities. Inputs come in several categories. Financial inputs include funding from grants, contracts, or organizational budgets. How much money do you have and where does it come from? Human inputs include staff time, volunteers, and consultants. How many people with what skills for how many hours? Material inputs include supplies, equipment, and curriculum or educational materials. What physical stuff do you need? Organizational inputs include partnerships, institutional support, and infrastructure. Who's committed to working with you? What organizational systems support the work? Knowledge inputs include research, data, and expertise. What information do you need? What specialized knowledge? Be thorough in cataloging inputs. Missing a critical input at the planning stage creates problems during implementation. When cataloging inputs, be methodical. List everything needed for each planned activity. If you're conducting workshops, what do you need? Space, facilitator time, materials, equipment, refreshments, transportation for participants, childcare so parents can attend. Distinguish between resources you already have and resources you need to acquire. Resources you have are confirmed. Resources you need are risks until secured. Be specific. Don't write staff. Write 2 full-time equivalent health educators with community outreach experience. Specificity reveals whether you actually know what you need, and include hidden inputs that are easy to overlook. Space, where will activities happen? Technology, what systems do you need? Administrative support, who handles logistics, data entry, reporting? Activities are what your program actually does. They consume inputs and produce outputs. Activities must flow logically from your theory of change. If your theory says that knowledge, skills, and social support will change behavior, then your activities should build knowledge, develop skills, and create social support. Activities should target the determinants you identified in your problem analysis. If lack of self-efficacy is a barrier, you need efficacy-building activities. If environmental access is a barrier, you need environmental modification activities. And be specific. Outreach is vague. Conduct weekly home visits to 100 high-risk individuals to provide diabetes. Education and self-management support is specific. Specific activities can be implemented, monitored, and evaluated. Vague activities cannot. Activities fall into several categories, and most programs use a mix. Direct services include classes, counseling, screening, and referrals. You're providing something directly to individuals. Community engagement includes outreach, community events, and coalition building. You're connecting with the community and building relationships. Environmental change includes policy advocacy and built environment modification. You're changing the context in which people make health decisions. Capacity building includes training others, providing technical assistance, and organizational development. You're strengthening others' ability to continue the work. Consider which categories fit your theory of change. If your theory emphasizes individual behavior change, direct services dominate. If your theory emphasizes systemic change, environmental and capacity building activities dominate. A critical check is input activity alignment. Each activity should have clearly assigned inputs. For every activity, ask, what resources does this activity require? Draw explicit connections. This activity needs this staff person, this much money, these materials, this space. Red flag. Activities without sufficient inputs. If you've planned an activity but the resources to support it are inadequate, you have a problem. Either find more resources or scale back the activity. Red flag. Inputs without connected activities. If you have resources that aren't supporting any activity, why are they in your plan? This sometimes happens when budgets are created separately from program design. Alignment ensures that your plan is realistic and that resources are deployed purposefully. Resource sufficiency is a reality check. Do you actually have enough of each input to implement your activities? Do the math, staff time needed versus staff time available. If your activities require 3,000 hours of staff time and you have two staff working 2,000 hours each, you're fine. If activities require 6,000 hours, you're not. Budget needed versus budget available. Tally up what everything costs. Compare to your funding. Material quantities needed versus quantities you can obtain, and build in contingency. Things take more resources than planned, staff get sick, prices increase, unexpected challenges arise. If your plan works only if everything goes perfectly, it's not a realistic plan. Let me highlight common mistakes in inputs and activities planning. Underestimating staff time required. Activities always take longer than you think. Meetings, documentation, problem solving, coordination. These eat time. Build in realistic estimates. Forgetting indirect costs. Administration, evaluation, and reporting all require resources. A program with no budget for data collection can't evaluate itself. A program with no budget for administration will drown in logistics. Assuming partnerships will materialize without cultivation. Partnerships require ongoing relationship investment. You can't just put partner X in your plan and assume they'll show up. Confirm commitments. Planning activities without confirming input availability. Don't design a program around resources you hope to get. Design around resources you have with contingencies for resources you might get. Let's summarize our key takeaways. Inputs encompass all resources invested in the program: financial, human, material, organizational, and knowledge resources. Be thorough in cataloging them. Activities are what the program does with those resources. They should be specific, aligned with your theory of change, and targeted at identified determinants of the problem. Every activity needs sufficient assigned inputs. Draw explicit connections. Which resources support which activities? Are they enough? And assess resource sufficiency realistically before finalizing plans. Do the math, build in contingency. If resources don't match the plan, adjust the plan. In our next lesson, we'll complete the logic model by focusing on outputs and outcomes, the right side of your program plan. Thank you.